Wow. Your breaths are not uninspiring. They are literally inspiring. Respiring means breathing. Inspiring means breathing in. You inspire and you outspire. Actually, you don't outspire, do you? You expire. Don't do that. You can inspire, but don't expire, please. But this is where the word expire comes from. Aspire, like respiration, spirit. That's what the original English meaning is. Breathing. It's to breathe. To have spirit is to breathe. Inspiration is actually to be breathing in and out. Expiration, when the last breath goes out, and that's it. So, if you're really inspired, it means you're breathing. Breathing is, by its etymological meaning, it's inspiring. But the point what you're trying to say is that to be interested in it, you put interest in it. It's fascinating, this breath. If you're really mindful, you'll find that no breath is the same. I don't know how many millions of breaths you've breathed since you were born, but there's no two breaths which are exactly the same. Every breath is unique. Just like every being in this room is unique. Even though there's a couple of twins here, you are unique. Your mother knows the difference very easily. You think your breath is twins, but no, everyone is unique. And it's important to you. If you go and visit someone who's sick, the nicest piece of advice to stop them dying is keep on breathing. That's a good piece of advice when someone's sick. So what's actually happening there? The breath is important to you. It's your vehicle. It's like a car. So in order to make it more interesting, you can do loving kindness with the breath. Bring the two together. Look upon your breath like a baby. Like your baby, like your child. Imagine that, men and women, men have become very good these days looking after children. Imagine you've got a child in your arms, your baby, your maybe 3 or 4 month old son. You're cradling in your arms as you go shopping. Would you drop the baby somewhere and forgot where you dropped it? Would you leave it at the shops and go home and say, oh, where did I leave my baby? That's what you do with the breath, isn't it? You're breathing in, but you drop it somewhere. You haven't got a clue where you left it. Why is that? Because you don't care about your breath. So you look upon your breath as being your darling little child. Or this little breath. And yet you can imagine rocking it, breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out. Oh, so sweet. Breathing in, breathing out. It's beautiful, baby. When you do that, because you have care, you've got kindness, you have love towards your breath. You imagine it's a little baby. You'll find it's very easy to watch your breath. Now, sometimes when I'm giving a talk or we have a dana, somebody brings their new child to be blessed. This is a little couple of month-year-old kid. When I was in Singapore, there's a couple of disciples just gave birth to their children, and they came to bring them for me to bless. And as soon as they brought this little baby in, I noticed, even though I was visiting from overseas, I was not the center of attention anymore. The baby was. You know what you girls are like? Any baby, oh, you love them. Oh, please let me hold it. Oh, isn't it sweet? Oh, isn't it lovely? Now you understand. If you can have the same feeling towards the breath, it becomes your center of attention. Oh, you love looking at this little baby and so seeing it smile. Or go, oh, look, it's smiling. Oh, isn't that cute? Like the breath, like the breath. Oh, it's just going in. Isn't that cute the way it goes in? Oh, it's charming. Look how it goes out. Oh, it's so sweet. If you look at the breath that way, it becomes interesting. Your attention is just so easy. In fact, it's hard to take you away from your breath. So do loving kindness on the breath. Look upon it as like it being this beautiful little baby. So important to you. You have loving kindness on the breath. Breath, the door of my heart's open to you. I care for you. Then you start watching the breath. And when you're actually cradling a baby, I always see these girls or these men looking at the little baby and they smile. They're happy. Loving kindness on the breath brings you happiness. And that happiness keeps your attention there. When your attention gets there, the breath stays and it gets so peaceful, so beautiful. It's even more attractive than a baby. So that's how you can make it interesting. Look upon the breath as being a little baby. After all, it comes from your womb as it comes out. And it goes back into your womb again. It's like a joey, like a kangaroo. Because the kangaroo, when they have little joeys, they go out of the pouch and back in again. Out and in, just like the breath. Okay, so that's how you can make the breath more interesting. Next question. How do I set up a simple altar at home? Easy, you just put it up, put the Buddha statue on top. You don't have to do it. Those of you who think of it, I have to put it in the right place. What if it's in the wrong place? If it's in the wrong place, you will know. One of my disciples in Perth came to see me one morning. They were very perturbed. Because what had happened was this. They'd set up their altar. It was in the hallway as they went into the living room or the dining room. No, the living room, the lounge room, sorry. After setting up their altar and putting some fruit in there or some incense and lights or whatever, when they came down the following morning, they noticed their Buddha statue had twisted round. So they thought it must have been their son, had maybe knocked it or something. So they straightened up again. When they came down the following morning, the next day, it had twisted round again. That really made them spooked. So they asked their son, did you do anything? He said, no, I didn't. So they thought, who knows? So they straightened it out again. And the third morning, it had also moved. This is supernatural. So they came and saw me. and I said, where you put it? You know what they'd done with it? They put it in front of a mirror. And it had moved by itself. Buddha statues don't like being in front of mirrors. Because it's against the rule for a monk, actually, to look at yourself in the mirror just for vanity. If it's to shave yourself, it's okay. And you put it in front of a mirror. And it moved. So any of you who get concerned whether you're putting the Buddha statue in the right place or the wrong place, if it's the wrong place, you will know about it. It will move. So you can set up an altar, but you can actually feel it where it's the right place. And it'll be, as long as it's a high place, a respectful place, that's good enough. Is it considered disrespectful to adorn Buddha images in the bedroom? You can adorn them as long as you feel that this is appropriate. In other words, you adorn them with like flowers or something, but not with silly things, like tattoos or anything like that, or studs. Because I've seen that people these days, they sometimes put nose. In the West they put nose studs, piercing this here and that. That's not how to adorn a Buddha. And tattoos are really in Western countries. They're really cool. All these people have got tattoos all over the place, but you don't tattoo a Buddha. So you adorn it in an appropriate way. And 3, I have noticed some restaurants decorate their premises with Buddha statues. Your comments, please. As long as it's in a high place and the restaurants don't serve alcohol, it's not really nice actually to serve alcohol in such a restaurant because the Buddha's there. So it's best actually, if it's like Buddhists own that restaurant, they want a Buddha in there to inspire them, then put it in the office somewhere. Not where people are just doing un-Buddhist things like drinking alcohol. Or if it's some of these seafood restaurants in the West where they put these lobsters in the water and you choose your own lobster to be boiled to death basically. And that's not right to have a Buddha statue there. So keep the Buddha statue away somewhere else. Next question. Here we go. Dear Ajahn, what is life? Okay. Life is what happens between being born and dying. Question 2. Question 1. How do we visualize the breath? It's the flow of air or the rise and fall of the ribcage. You don't visualize it, it manifests for you. So it's just how it wants to present itself to you. However it wants to present itself, you accept it as it is. You don't tell it how it should manifest. You don't tell it, breath, you better rise and fall on the ribcage or else. You don't tell it, breath, you must be at the tip of the nose. You don't tell it anything. You're kind to the breath. So breath, however you want to manifest to my consciousness, that's fine with me. The door of my heart is open to you, no matter how you manifest, no matter where you manifest on my body. So this is where you don't demand the breath to be this way or that way. To be someone who's content, easily satisfied, not demanding in nature. Question 2, what comes after the counting of the breath? What can we expect as we keep focusing on the breath? You can't expect anything. Don't expect things. You just count the breath. After a while, you just let go of the counting. You're left with the breath. The counting is just there to give you an opportunity to focus. Once you've focused, the mind is latched onto that. Let go of the counting. Make it disappear. So you just feel the breath. Without giving it a name, just feel the breath. You know the breath. It's going in, it's going out. Which what happens next? I didn't make this quite clear in the instructions. First of all, you just know some of the breath. It's just when I first look at you, I can see, that's Amata, that's Raymond, that's this, that's that. But as I look at you more closely, I get more details of who you are. I notice more of your features, your clothes. Now what it means here, when you first watch the breath, you just see in, out, in, out, in, out. As you look at the breath more, you see it's not just in, out. You see the in has got a beginning. You start to see the very beginning of an in-breath. You start to see it actually grow to its peak and then fade away as the last piece of air enters your body. The last moment of the in-breath. And then you notice there's a pause between the in-breath and the out-breath. You're neither breathing in nor you're breathing out. And then you start to experience the breath being exhaled. You notice the very beginning of the out-breath as the force of the exhaled air gets stronger and stronger. And then, when most of the air is exhaled, the out-breath declines, gets weaker and weaker as the out-breath is finished. And then there's another pause. But for me, it's not as long. The pause between the out-breath and the in-breath is never as long as the pause between the in-breath and the out-breath. But for you, it may be different. But you see that pause. You start to see the whole of the breath. Just like I can see you're a girl, you're a boy, you're more than a boy. See the colour of your hair, your size, the robes or the clothes you're wearing. You start to see more detail. And as you watch the breath more and more, you see more of its detail. It's called filling the whole mind with the breath. And it fills the mind so much, you find actually it is incredibly interesting. You actually can play around and ask yourself, which is the longest pause between the in-breath and the out-breath, or the out-breath and the in-breath? Does it reach its peak in the middle, or is it towards the end when it's the in-breath is going in fastest? How does it work? Are they all the same length of time? Is the in-breath the same duration as the out-breath, or what? You start to really get interested in this breath. And as you know it more and more, you don't get involved in it, you don't control it. You're being like a scientist. You don't control the experiment, you're just to watch and gather the information without disturbing. And when you actually start seeing this, the breath fills the whole mind, and it gets so peaceful, it starts getting very still. The next stage which happens, sometimes people think they've lost the breath, but you haven't. You don't know whether it's going in or going out. Because what happens next is best explained by a simile given by Buddhaghosa. He probably got the simile from someone else, but it's a brilliant simile. It's a simile of a carpenter sawing a piece of wood. If you start sawing a piece of wood, when you first watch, you're focusing obviously on where the saw hits the wood. When you first start looking at that, you can see the handle of the saw, you can see the tip of the saw, the end of the saw. But as you focus in, after a while, just like the simile of the bird being shot through the eyeball, after a while, all you can see is that part of the saw just touching the wood. You can only see one or two teeth, and just that little piece of wood where the saw is hitting the wood. And therefore you don't know after a while whether that tooth, that sawtooth, is at the beginning or the end of the saw. All you see is one sawtooth meeting the wood. The attention has become focused and refined. It's the same with the breath. After a while you don't see in-breath, out-breath. You just see this one moment of breath happening now. This instant of breathing. And you can't tell whether it's in-breath or out-breath. It's no longer important. It's just breath. After a while, you get used to that feeling. Because sometimes you think, I've lost the breath. You haven't lost the breath. You've lost the perception of in and out. But you're still watching the breath. What you can do is, if you think you lost your breath, that which I was aware of, what was it? If you've got enough insight, you notice that was the breath. It's only it's changed its appearance. Its inness and outness are no longer recognized. It's just breath. You're getting more and more refined. And that breath becomes so still, it soon transforms into happiness. Quite seamlessly. And you ask yourself, what am I watching? Happiness. But what's that to do with the breath? I'll tell you what it's to do with the breath. It's the way the mind is knowing the breath, rather than the body feeling the breath. There are 6 senses, remember? And you can actually experience the breath through one of 2 sense doors. The sense of physical touch, or the sense of mind knowing. What's happening here is you're transferring the perception from a physical touch to a mental knowing. It just happens by itself. You're not feeling the breath anymore. You're knowing the breath. And that knowing is usually manifested as a beautiful, happy feeling. That's how the mind knows the breath. You're just happy. People ask, what should I do? I've lost the breath. Don't disturb the process. Sit down, do nothing, and enjoy the insight service. That's all you need to do. So, don't do anything. After a while, you recognize that you are watching the breath. It is happening. But the breath is changing its appearance. You just stay with that happiness. And it grows and grows and grows. That's where nimittas come. That's where you see the mind. The whole purpose of meditation, letting go of time, letting go of the internal commentary, the thinking, letting go of the body and its 5 senses. So there's no more seeing, smelling, tasting and touching. All you're left with is the mind. It's going to the world of the mind by turning off the switches of the 5 senses of thinking and time. That's the whole purpose of this meditation, to get into the mind. Okay, great question. Any comments on that? Okay, next question. My goodness, it's not one question, it's a whole essay. Can you please show your wisdom, explain the difference between meditation, contemplation, reflection? Contemplation is thinking. Reflection, you can reflect upon anything. So the data is not sufficient. So contemplation is just thinking. Reflection is you have some data and you try and understand it. What meditation is, you're getting the very refined data. You are calming the mind, going in and seeing what's inside of you. So you don't contemplate or reflect at the beginning of an experiment. When you're a scientist, you're doing an experiment, you're taught, do the experiment first. Objectively, collect all the data, but don't interfere with the experiment while it's in process. If you try and make a conclusion before you've got all the data in, you will skew the experiment. Which is why that sometimes people, when they're doing an experiment, they know what they want to prove.